A mad scientist, a teenager, the high school bully, your dad bumming your mum. A movie? Yes, that's what we're talking about today. Richard's gone. But that's right. We're talking.
Whew,
We're
wasn't ready.
talking about-
That wasn't discussed before we went on, but
He
fine.
wasn't ready.
I'm here for it. I'm here
That
for
was
it.
my plot synopsis for 1985's Back to the Future. Time hopping,
Mum bumming.
mum bumming, non-fridge time machining, the film, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and that's I've run out of intro steam, but that's what we're talking about today. So, and it is a film that has been oft requested for us to talk about, and I don't think either of us, in any respective garb, has really talked about, whether it be in our previous incarnation.
I've been doing this 10 odd years, never talked about this one.
Yeah. So, and it's nice to be asked. So, thank you. Where should we begin? This is a film that is held in extremely high regard, and I think rightfully so. But obviously, it has its sort of followers. I think it is just a brilliant film. I don't really get into the reads on what's best. It is a trilogy, but it is, we're talking about the first film here today. It's one of those. Zemeckis has his track record, I would say, with this and Forrest Gump, of starting out to make one film, and then through the process of making something, I think, completely different. What do you think?
Interesting. Do go on.
Well, so all right, so Forrest Gump is really is accessibly so. So if you go online and you look at the early screen tests with Tom Hanks is playing Forrest Gump like Tom Hanks. There's no southern accent. He's just literally playing it like Tom Hanks would, and it doesn't work. It does not work. Once they got in Michael Connor Hall, I think his name was, who plays young Forrest, and they were going to Tom Hanks and going, "We need to train this kid to speak like you." He went, "No, why don't I just speak like him?" And he went and hung out with him, and he was like, he just spoke to him, and he was like, "What did he say?" I think it's on Graham Norton. There's a clip on Graham Norton where he said, like, I asked him what his dad did, and he went, my daddy makes grease." And he was like, makes grease? He's like, they make grease? He was like, yes. He was like, what do you do with grease? He goes, "Oh, grease is used in all kinds of products." It was like, they use it in lipsticks, and he was just like, why would I do anything else? He was like, obviously that's Forrest Gump. He found the character that way, and I think.
So, is this referring to the Eric Stoltz situation? Is that what we're saying?
Well, a little bit. But I suppose only in the sense of, I think Robert Zemeckis is someone who allows the film to breathe. I think it's the case with this film. I think he's someone who has his finger on the pulse and goes, "This isn't working. Like, I'm down the road on this film with a star who isn't. It's not Eric Stoltz's fault, but that's not what this film is, And I think he has this. I don't know, because you kind of go, well, he's a big example of it, but you kind of go, he knew, right? He knew early on, and it's the same thing with Forrest Gump. It's the same thing with this. It was like he allowed the process to speak for itself, and I think this is a film where it's kind of like he just went, no, it's Michael J. Fox. We'll make it work, and look at the result. I mean, Christ. I mean, we can all see it, right? We can all see the
that was a decision well made. No, disrespect to Eric Stoltz, he's a wonderful actor, but clearly that was a decision well made to the benefit of the film. I do. Yeah, I last time we covered Return of the Jedi, and I kind of made a statement up front that I think it's important to discuss films in their context and not within the kind of retrospective religious fervor that they create, and like a lot of Spielberg adjacent movies, this was exec produced by Spielberg and Kennedy and Marshall, I think, at least Spielberg, and I believe perhaps under Amblin. And I would call Star Wars a Spielberg adjacent, and so Indiana Jones are just Spielberg movies. But there's this kind of insane religious devotion to them, and I think it's important to say here's a film that came out in 1985 and what that is. I really like the sequels. I love all of the Back to the Future movies. This is a standalone. It's a really clever standalone. They did a lovely job of retrofitting the sequels into it, which I think is really. I don't think any sequel has ever pulled that off to the same degree since.
And it has a beautiful meta commentary on the first film, doesn't it? Because you're talking about, and it's what like fucking Terminator Genesis tried to do, and it's like, you can't do that.
They had the fucking nerve to reference this movie when they were making that as well. It's like,
really? No.
I would rather have seen the Terminator playing Johnny Be Good, frankly, but here we are. Yeah, do you know what? It's a really, really fucking great movie, and it fires on all cylinders. And this is written by Zemeckis and Gale, who it keeps coming up in the press. The reason, like I mentioned to you earlier, there's a kind of zeitgeist around Back to the Future at the moment. In that there's been a very successful musical in the West End, but then Christopher Lloyd, I think Lloyd and Fox recently were on stage somewhere at a convention, and then Lloyd put up a tweet that people have interpreted as like there's going to be a sequel, and it's like, I really doubt that very much. But anyway, it's just this beautifully tightly wound film. It's so brilliantly plotted. I think something that wears on with the sequels in this particular is that, like, say what you like about Robert Zemeckis, he's this insanely innovative and innovative, forward-thinking filmmaker. So he's inventing things as he goes along, and for better or for worse, say what you like, how that works or not, but they invent techniques, and they make them work. It's like the ideas first and the technicals later. So it's always like, because like the motion control, I know we're talking about Back to the Future, the first one, but like the motion control stuff in Back to the Future 2 is insane, and it's on a 35mm film, or maybe 70mm film, but it's like motion control rigs. Like, I did a motion control test that's on my Instagram that I can do now at home 40 years later with the gimbal, right? That was on film, and they invented it. It's fucking mental. Like,
I did it, dude. So just not to tangent, but I did a motion control shot on Snow White and the Huntsman. So the shot, it's in the film actually. There's a shot of where the camera pans across the courtyard of the castle set, and the dwarfs have snuck in, and they sneak behind various things, and it's just a panning shot. To achieve that, because the actors who were playing the dwarfs were not dwarfs or little people or whatever you want to call it, they had little people doubles, and then they had littler people doubles, so they were smaller doubles. Ian McKellen.
It's a bit like the children in the spacesuits in Alien, right? You create that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And anyway, that's not the point. So we did this panning shot, and it was on a motion control rig, and I was just in the foreground. I was just a guard who was supposed to look gormless, so they picked me naturally. But I was just there, and there was a horse and the stuff. But they did a pass for every single element in the shot. So I had my pass. There was the pass for the horse. There was the pass for the backdrop. There was a pass for the actors. So you had like Nick Frost and Ray Winston and Eddie Marsan, and all these guys did their, and Ian McShane did their pass. And then you had the pass for the small people doubles, and then you had the smaller people doubles, and then you had all the things, right? So, and this motion control rig is on a, and it's just programmed like, to do the same pass every time for everything.
Exactly the same.
It's a very impressive thing to put together. Anyway, sorry, that was.
Anyway, yeah. So what? Sorry. So please, this is your pick. Talk to me.
No.
Talk to me of Back to the Future.
I feel like I just totally stole your thunder on that. I apologize.
But Robert Zemeckis, innovative shit. Like, and this is full of it. It's got all the kind of great stuff. It has to use kind of and there's optical composites. I don't think they quite on the motion control yet. There's loads of like rotoscoping and stuff like that. I don't know if it's like Ben Edlund or anything like that. Like the sets, it's that same, I believe, Universal backlot set that's in Gremlins. The same cinema and stuff and everything in there. It captures like. Doing anything period is really expensive, and Back to the Future in the same way as I've talked about many times, you know, we've been stuck in the 80s now for getting on for 25 years. There was a spell where people who are our age in the 80s were nostalgic about growing up in the 50s. And that's all your Spielbergs and your Lucases and all the rest
30 years
of it.
hence, right? It's always
except now it seems to have been drawn out. But luckily, kids have started wearing kind of shitty 90s clothes to the shitty 80s clothes, so that's progress, I guess. And it's this massively nostalgic, but like really beautiful picture of 1950s Americana. Like, and it's all in camera because it's 1985. So it's all the cars, all the costumes, all the picket fences, and it's those. You know, he goes to the town square and it cranes up and there's extras everywhere and there's stuff going on. Looks like everybody's got a job and everybody's got a life and everybody's got a husband and a wife and a girlfriend, and, you know, and they're walking a dog. Like it's got, because it's essentially, you know, it's the kind of stuff you would see in a period drama in terms of like showing off, because it kind of is it's not a period drama, but it's a period piece. So like the art direction is set design, it's fucking off the chain. It's incredible. And then obviously like you got the soundtrack and everything as well. So you get to drop in loads of era appropriate music, lots of references to TV and movies. You know, what I like about it is there's lots of like very, very wide photography in it, and it's one of these things where everything's generally in focus for the most part because you have to see what's on every newspaper and every menu and every billboard, because a lot of people have spent a lot of time packing all that in there. And it's got a thing. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, go on.
Well, there's the famous bit which I've always really liked. And I think there's a few bits like this. When at the beginning of the movie, we're in the car park of the mall, it says the Twin Pines Mall. And then when the DeLorean travels back to the farm, there are 2 pine trees and it knocks one over. And then when they travel back, it says the Lone Pine Mall. Right. And like that doesn't have to be there, but it just adds to the kind of rich fabric. And also, really important in time travel movies, you have to have very clearly defined rules. And this doesn't have someone look at the camera and explain them to you, like that Jokey Austin Powers scene. You learn them with the characters. You know, they start to experiment with it and you learn along with them.
Well, so the time travel aspect of it, I think a lot, and I think it becomes potentially clearer in the second and third film, but it's certainly down. And the pine trees are exactly emblematic of that, because it starts. It's in the opening stuff in the mall car park, but it's thrown away because he goes. He say like, oh, he was obsessed with breeding pine trees.
Right.
And then he walks off, and it's like, and that's the point. It's like, so why would he, if he was obsessed with breeding pine trees, and it was called Twin Pines Mall because he was obsessed with breeding them. If he ran over the second pine tree, and you know, why would he call it Lone Pine Tree Mall? Why was he just then obsessed with just one pine tree?
The girl pine tree.
Yeah, it's like, what, I don't, you know.
Would you like to know a mistake I made once?
What?
So as I talked about many times, I told you I used to work in a language school. I used to work with students for years and years, and that's what I was doing when I first met you. And this probably would have been about the time I met you. Like once a month on a Thursday, we'd do a thing called Movie and Pizza Night. We'd open the school because everyone was 16 and over, right? So they're essentially adults. Like we would open the school canteen on a Thursday night and we'd put on a DVD and we'd order like fucking 40 Domino's pizzas, and it'd be like feeding time at the zoo. They'd all go fucking mental. And it'd usually be what film come out this week. Captain America Winter Soldier, fine. Get down Asda, as it was back then, buy a fucking DVD, put that on. But every now and then it was like, oh, let's put a classic on. And I was like, do you know what? Everybody loves Back to the Future. Do we have Back to the Future in the school library? Brilliant. Don't buy a DVD this month. I'm going to put on Back to the Future. And I put on Back to the Future. And then in the first 5 minutes, I remembered that we had a lot of Libyans in the school. And and it was like, I'm just going to stand at the back of the room and just be like, yeah. I ordered lots of pizzas without pork, but I put on a film that really is pretty racist against Libyans for a bit. Like, And that was when that went down quite awkwardly for a good 10 minutes. Anyway, I think they got wrapped up in it in the end and quite enjoyed it. But
all I would say about that is that I don't know that it's racist against lesbians. It speaks to a panic. It's the same thing with the sort of nuclear panic.
Kind of moral panic.
Yeah,
but they're a bunch of geezers, with rags on their heads with AK-47 going Allahu Akbar.
No, I get that, and I think it's when you if you look at it in the sense of no, you're totally right, and but I suppose if you
dug this hole, I'm so sorry.
No, you haven't, and you're right, and it's right that we should examine films like that because I think that's important. But I think the thing is like you're looking at this as like I've spoken about this a lot with films, probably to people's annoyance, but it is that thing of perspective, and it's like and the beauty of time travel stuff is like it really fucks with perspective, and it has that ability, especially now in hindsight, to speak to moral panic and to speak to the kind of Nancy Reagan thing. And I'm not saying that's the same as Libyans.
It speaks later to black struggle in America.
Yeah.
With the mayor, I'm going to be the first black mayor, and then someone slaps him down, but then he is the first black mayor, Goldie Wilson, right? And you know, so just to be, just that moment was like, also,
it's part of a broader tapestry, but I totally understand what you mean when he's just going Libyans and running off. It's like, but it's also because he fleeced them.
It is also the setup's hilarious because it's basically talking about how sketchy Doc Brown is. And he's like, the only people you get plutonium from was Libyan terrorists. I was like, fuck, okay.
Yeah. And that would have been Arab terrorists if it was 10 years later, or, it's like, so it's not.
It's of its time and everything, but like it's worth sort of pointing out. There's a very rich vein of don't fuck your hot mum. Like that seems to be, because definitely, like as a young boy, I had the biggest crush on Leah Thompson, because Leah Thompson. But yeah, it's like it's one of these things you come back in adulthood, and it's like it's like the joke, and it's funny. It is funny. It's like, and it's very knowingly doing the Oedipal thing, and he so doesn't want, like, the whole thing is so creepy to him and freaking him out the whole time. They do the thing in the second one, she comes out, she's got massive boobs and she's an alcoholic because Biff's like made her miserable and like paid for her surgery. But it's like, it's the whole thing is like, you're not going to exist because your mum fancies you more than your dad. it's just so great. Yeah, it's full of, and originally, as you alluded to, they wanted him to be getting inside a fridge, but they didn't want to do that because kids do that and die. So it was kind of, let's not do that. So it's like, don't fuck your mum, don't get in a fridge. Back to the Future's got your back. Don't worry about
drive a DeLorean at a lightning storm.
yes, indeed, at just the right moment. Yeah, it's got that. It's So I
tell you what, I think so. It's what's interesting. This is what I was going to say earlier. Actually, is it's like interesting. See, Back to the Future came out in 1985. The Terminator came out in 1984 in America. It came out here in 1985, actually. But it's interesting to see that sort of techno panic thing, but fused with time travel and the sort of obsession we had with time travel at a certain era. And what the causal aspect of it is very similar. We really were looking at and certainly from an Oedipal point of view, this sort of idea of like
I never drew
fucking with your mother.
I never drew that line between those two films.
It's weird, isn't it?
If you watch them next to each other, you'd never think they're a year apart.
Yeah,
you'd never think that because Terminator is so cheap and grimy, and Back to the Future's a Spielberg adjacent project, so it's
they seem tonally so far apart, and yet they're actually talking about very similar things. Causality and what and I think as well the point is it's about saying to an audience, if you could do this, what would you do it? And what?
Sure.
Because they don't have that butterfly effect thing. I mean, I know that Terminator talks about ending humanity, which I guess is somewhat butterfly effecty, a little bit. But it still comes down to a personal story. It comes down to an individual, And they both do that. They both say that, and it's about saying the individual matters. It's about saying
it's got they both got the nuclear panic thing as well, was it? Because originally he was supposed to drive the DeLorean to a nuclear test site, and they need a nuclear bomb, which is totally appropriate 1950s. But then the DeLorean runs on plutonium, which he got from terrorists. Obviously, Terminator's got his nuclear stuff. Yeah, I never really drew a line between these two, but yeah, and it's got the Oedipal kind of mum stuff in it as well. Well, Terminator's less Oedipal, I suppose, but still the kind of mum stuff. And it's assuring your own future, isn't it? That's the other thing.
But both speak to that thing about the individual mattering, right? The individual, and about realizing you're more, even in your mundane life, you're more connected than you realize. If you just go and fuck with your life, if fucked with, like, and this is what Back to the Future 2 does brilliantly. It's saying, like, if your mum not even married someone else, but divorced your dad, or if your dad died and she married someone else, you could end up in this sort of, well, Donald Trump, like, future, you know what I mean? It's that thing of like, it's
don't shit the bed at home. We didn't make Back to the Future 2.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just, you know what I mean, though.
No. Yeah, totally, because that's what it is. Yeah, it's totally what it is. Like, Tom Wilson as Biff.
Oh, he's
one of the best bullies ever. Like,
I love. Like, don't get me wrong,
movie bullies ever. Like, amazing.
Christopher Lloyd, Martin J. Fox, love them. Leah Thompson, worship at their feet. He is my hero of that.
He's your MVP for these.
Oh, MVP.
I just think, but I think you're right though. Like, and even in Back to the Future 3 as well. But I suppose we can get to
my favorite moment, dude. My favorite moment of probably the whole series is that bit where he goes. He's outside. He's ready for his standoff. He's outside the bar. And Doc Brown is like, he's being dunked in the thing because he's and he goes, he's like, you gotta come out here, and he goes like, he forfeit, and he's like, forfeit, and he just goes, you can't. He goes, that means you win without a fight. He goes, he can't do. Hey, you can't do that. It's just this moment of, he can't do. Hey, you can't do that. It's just like he is God tier as far as I'm concerned in terms of his acting in this.
He's
unbelievable.
Really kind of massively threatening, but like weirdly petulant, like kind of truculent, petulant. It's like because he lives with his gran, right? And he's like, "Shut up, grandma!"
And you know it's his voice doing the grandma because you never see the grandma.
Yeah, you know, yes.
So you know it's him. You know it's him doing that voice.
And also like Crispin Glover. It's fucking amazing. Like, because he's trying to coach his own dad, and he does, I am Darth Vader and all that stuff, and like
it's all the weak stuff as well. Like him bearing in mind these are sort of 20-somethings playing adults. Yeah, and there's that bit where it's like, "Come on, McFly, come on!" And he's like knocking on his head, and he's like, "Oh, right, okay, all right." And it's the switch for when you then see the alternate future where he's like, "Come on, Biff," and he's not just he's not domineering. He's just like, "Biff, now come on, you told me 2 passes of wax," and he's like, "Okay, all right." But, it's like, and he's
Wilson's
kind, gentle.
He's all kind of like shrewish and hunched over and stuff. And
but Glover isn't domineering. He's kind and he's gentle and he's a good father and he's a good person. And it's like his goodness shone out. And that's what, Biff, all it took was smashing Biff in the face once as a teenager. And apparently that's all that mattered,
That's one. But it's that butterfly effect thing, isn't it? Right? Like he, and then Marty accidentally wrote Johnny Be Good or whatever. It's something this is just. I don't want to get into the kind of fanboyism or anything. But something that's bothered me ever since I first saw it is that I just find like he changes their lives for the better, right? But he doesn't remember his entire alternate life. He only remembers the old thing because he's surprised by everything he finds.
Right. Yeah,
so like it's largely the same. They live in the same house. They're way more successful, but there's no way they had all the same birthday parties and meals and holidays. So do you remember that time we went to Disneyland? He'd be like, yeah. Because like when he goes back, there's going to be a layer between him and his parents. I'm reading to it's about a flying car. Well, it's not yet. It is at the end. It's a gag ending. It wasn't supposed to be a sequel. It was a gag ending. The flying car. Right?
Yeah.
As absurd as possible. It's about a time traveling car, Richard. But that always like being the kind of, fairly sort of spectrumy kid that I was. It was just kind of like, no, because like they're going to have different lives that he's not going to remember, and it's going to be really difficult for him to reintegrate. And it's bad time traveling car,
which is a
probably,
fair point. The problem is if you have a protagonist who suddenly is part of the new future you're watching, you as an audience.
You have no interim anymore. You have no interim, and then you do a sequel where he doesn't remember any of it happening.
Yeah, well, and the flying car at the end. I mean, that whole thing is like you say, it's a gag ending, and the point is, it's like we just sort of spent hours working out what happens if you go to the past and fucking with a very few things. And Doc Brown's just gone to the future, and he turns up with a flying car and those glasses that don't make any sense, and he's just like, huh? He's just like, oh, and he's chucking bananas and shit in the back.
Yes,
of it.
Mr. Fusion. Yeah, it's great. Like, it's such a brilliant gag ending. It's brilliant. It's also warning from history. I love Back to the Future 2. I love all of them. I would like. There's debate. Too, yeah, I think they're all fucking brilliant. I don't give a shit. Absolutely. Like they're supposed to be fun. There's flying train makes as much sense as anything else. Like. The flying car is a warning from history because they're like, here's a gag ending. Then your movie makes millions of dollars and the studio go, we need another one now. And you're like, oh, fuck, we put a flying car in it. We have to make good on that now. Which I thought is great. I really love, like, if this was a one and done, it's still the most amazing ending because it's like, like you say, very knowingly it trashes everything it's taught us. It said like, no, don't fuck with time, don't do this, and then it turns up and it all goes nuts, and it's just
I don't think it does. I think it's consistent with the idea of don't fuck with time, because he's like it's your kids, something's got to be done about your kids, and it's like, you fucked with time. That's why you're here.
That's what I'm saying. This is your fault. Stop it.
Yeah, stop it.
You stop it, but he hasn't stopped it. He's kept it up.
Exactly. It's this idea that a bad thing happens. It's like, yeah, that's called time.
Yeah, so we learned that we're not supposed to mess with it, but you've decided you're not happy. You're not happy with my future because you've been walking around in like zip up Nikes, fucking everybody and doing future drugs. Doc looks like the type. Look at him. Like whatever you've been up to.
Well, and the third one is, I think I used to. So the second one used to be my favorite as a kid. Then I think the first one has become my favorite over time. But the third one is bloody good in terms of its like I know, because I think for a lot of people it was like, oh, it's boring because it's a Western, and it is. But it's like it speaks to that thing of like, you know, because the main thing is Clara Clayton. Clayton. Oh yeah. Oh, you made me want to watch it. Yeah. But there's that Clayton Ravine thing, and it's like, oh, we realize the whole
that Lone Pines Mall thing and everything.
Yeah, and it's about knocking down a monument, essentially saying there's a ravine that was named after her because this crazy school teacher went over the edge, and it's like, no, she only went over the edge because horses were spooked because of and you stopped it, and it's that realizing that I just fucked with history again, you know, and it's a beautiful film. It's a beautiful film that talks about the causality of all this stuff, and you know, and like you say, you know, the first film clearly was just a loop. Arguably, I think this does a better job of the trilogy, if you will, of Back to the Future films, does a better job of putting a bow on that loop than the Terminator films do. I think the Terminator films
by trilogy you mean the first two Terminator films?
I do. Well, yeah, yes. You know, but the point being is like that the second Terminator film spins it out into something else and starts talking about other things.
Yeah, and it's sort of unapologetic, whereas these kind of Back to the Future 2 goes to insane lengths to knit it together. It's crazy. Like, is it like, you know, I'm not talking about that movie right now, but like it's probably the most internally consistent trilogy. And it has a flying train in it, so don't come at me with some diagram, right? But like, this is like, it's one of the most. It has this brilliant internal consistency, I think, Back to the Future, and I think the level of quality is consistent as well.
Elizabeth Shue notwithstanding. Well, yeah, but it's made by the same people.
Yes, and Crispin Glover as well, because he's not back in 2 or 3.
Yes, of course, yeah. But I think you're right. I think it sort of has that sense of like you said, the second film, and again, we're not talking about the second film, but the second film has that thing of like going back into it and talking about, you know, has that meta thing of which is sort of almost like, you know, the first film has it on a level, the second film had to go into that point of like, we've jumped into the timeline of the first film. You know, we've jumped into the film and we're fucking with the film.
I've always loved that.
Yeah,
I love that about the second one. It's so clever. It's so brilliantly done.
It's almost like stand-up humor. It's that thing of like a callback, right? It's like
that
thing of, you know?
And then it makes you. What I always loved about it as a young'un was that because when you watch the first one, you could all these things are happening just out of frame. Like, because like when he slams the door on Biff's face, doesn't he? And goes through, and then like the other Marty goes through the door or something. I can't remember, but Biff sees them both, and so like and when he's climbing up on the rafters and stuff, and he's wearing his like Michael Jackson disguise with his pork pie hat and his Ray-Bans and stuff, and it's just But that's about time, I'm afraid.
Oh well, fuck this then.
Whole time.
Yeah, man. Great film. Go see it. If you haven't
heard of it, it's called Back to That Future. Well, I'll let you wrap up. This is your show this week.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to us talk ramble bollocks about Back to the Future. But it is, you know, I mean, it's hey, you all know it, you all love it. I think if you haven't been here before, and why wouldn't you have been? Please. Hit that subscribe button and smash the like button. I hate when people say that. Anyway,
this is your life now.
Yeah, but no, please do, please. Actually, please share your experiences with Back to the Future below, and we will respond to them. I know that's the thing that a lot of YouTubers say because they want you to tickle their algorithms, but I genuinely would love to know your experiences with this film and kind of what it means to you, and because I think I think we're all of a certain age. I mean, we're all aging out now. Christ, we're all about to hit 40, but but you know, we all came to this film at a certain point. I mean, this film came out when I was 1, so it's like, well, you know, I wasn't even 1 actually when it came out, but you know, it's like, it's one of those things where you discovered it at a certain point in your life where I think it ended up meaning more to you, and then so, you know, yeah, chuck it in the comments, let us know. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Discord, TikTok. Do we? Yeah, we do. Okay, good.
We're not on TikTok.
We're not on TikTok. Instagram.
We're on all the socials that your aunt is. As a rule.
I'm bloody bus.
Habbo Hotel.
75.
Friendster.
Gladden. Yeah, that one.
MySpace.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I have been Anne Duncan, and this has been Anne Richards.
Goodbye, I am him.